We are all just pawns and sheep and slaves to what life has to offer us. And the only escape is death. That's the only way we can get out of all the hell that we're dealing with. There's no cure for what we're dealing with. There's no way out. There's no escape.
We're going to be talking about...
Welcome back, kids. This is your resident schizo here, and today this is the third installment of beating this nail into the ground until it is old news. I will be pursuing this style of content until your ears bleed and my voice no longer works. Once my larynx has physically fallen out of my throat, then I'll consider a different path, but as it stands now, I need to make a point. And I want to say, just totally off topic, sort of on topic, the idea of pills is fucking stupid, right? Red pill, blue pill, black pill, clear pill, pink pill, whatever pill you're fucking taking, it's not going to work. Because if your core motivation is to alleviate symptoms, you've already failed. If you don't want to change who you are and you just want a pill to make everything magically better, it's not going to work. These pills, as a philosophical concept, are very flawed because it's like, here's an idea I'm going to give to you, and it's going to solve your problems if you just have enough of these ideas, if you keep taking this pill, right? To ignore the actual things that you're not doing in life to make your life better. Like, it's the excuse of a fantasy, a skewed perception of reality to project onto the world that you quite literally have to reaffirm by taking the pill. So I'm not going to make my own pill here. You don't take my ideas. Create your own. As a matter of fact, don't even try to create ideas. Don't try to formulate them in words and then stick to those words. Do things, and things that make your life better, stick to those regardless of the framing of the words. You can contradict yourself in syntax all day long and still act in a way that is consistent. Anyways, I'm also going to read you this pitch for this concept that I have, right? And I've optimized this for the context of the YouTube channel, metadata, tags, and whatnot. I'm using internet lingo to get this across. This is not representative of the finished product, but I've created it for you. I've made a script that I might add as a channel trailer, right, for this shit we call Draconian Hopecore, which is simply an adaptation of my idea of the dead man and all of the philosophical concepts therein that are being developed. Here we go. Let me I used to think that I could find a middle ground for you fuckers, but the only thing I found is that no one who was complaining wanted anything other than to really just complain. You fuckers don't even want to be right. Y'all just want something to blame. Some convoluted fabric of excuses to justify why you aren't who you want to be. The Matrix, late-stage capitalism, recession, human rights, end-time sinners, patriarchy, extremists, wokeism, fascists, inequalities, safe democracy, the deep state, the IRS, global warming, the World Economic Forum, the death of the family, anything to frame whatever you're doing as pointless, so that somebody will do for you what you won't do for yourself out of pity. A race of deconstruction to ensure that there will be absolutely fucking nothing left. No one is creating anything but a pathogen. This bullshit attempts to fix the divide, a separation of conflict and goal that would eradicate any sense of purpose when we shoot the idea of struggle in the back of the fucking head. All real pain is gone. Do you ever wonder where your pleasure went? Both concepts have become superficial. Fighting over scraps when we aren't even that hungry. A war to end all wars. Isn't that fucking poetic? Now, we manufacture conflict in the name of getting rid of it, grasping at something that is not attainable just to finally bemoan the fact that we cannot have it. Our focal point is pointless. You wonder why you can't see reality in any other way than pointless? Everyone has their final solution. You're not even just fighting each other for the same thing at this point. You're all fighting to prevent somebody else from pursuing what you won't go after yourself. Fighting to prove that their manufactured problems cause your own. Life passing everyone by while you shame anyone who dares engage in it. In anything other than a battle of fantasies. You're based, they're cringe. They're insensitive, we're progressive. All trying to forge the most inane reason why the world is not as it should be. It literally cannot be any other way than how it is. You can't change the past, you can't change the future. It is what it is. But guess what? Guess what can be some other way? You. Life is inevitable. Memory is immortality. The continuum of existence can forget you, abhor you, or be grateful that you were here. If you don't believe me, that's fine. I pity you. The reality that you observe, whatever faith that you have in your oppression and nothing and meaningless and the temporary, in whatever should not be, that faith is the experience that you participate in. I don't care if it's a faith in something greater than what we have or the faith in nothing at all. If you're bitter about the tragedy you've created yourself, just remember, all tragedy eventually becomes a comedy. I'm only here to show you what a joke you are by reminding you that you're responsible for everything that happens to you. Who cares if that's logically impossible? Look where logic got you, whiny bitch. Your entire personality is formed around making an excuse for the image of yourself that you haven't actually become. You've got an excuse for that also, don't you? Even if somebody will listen to you, they don't want to hear it. You'd be a laughingstock if the joke weren't so old. I'm not going to help you, but I'll make you funny again. Then maybe you'll also get tired of the joke and decide to live. All at a point where you're too lazy to create meaning, just smart enough to stay ignorant, too stupid to see hope, so addicted to complaining about the actions that are destroying you that you refuse to stop, and just annoying enough to make sure people won't put in the effort to call you out. It's not a big deal. Oh, I know. But a lot of those little deals, and now we have this big old debt. Here we have a mountain of molehills. I plan to pave it down and install an outhouse so that there will be a worthwhile place for your opinions. I mean, if you don't even plan to participate in the experience and opportunities that come with life, if you're not here to create something better, then there's nothing else to do than shit on you. Create a stigma that makes people not want to be you. We've let people romanticize this shit for too long, and it's about time we take our fingers off our noses and let the stench in. I mean, we're not going to solve the problem until we recognize it. And even then, we're not going to attempt to solve the problem until we're really, really disgusted by it. This is a wonderful world. And if you're not on board with that, you can get the fuck out, because it's our responsibility to keep it that way. We have to do the maintenance. We have to make it into a wonderful world. We have to allow people to see it as a wonderful world. And those that constantly just basically create propaganda saying that all of this shit is meaningless, I'm not going to censor you. I'm going to do the next worst thing. I'm going to do my best to make people despise what you have to say. And I'm going to give them a reason to do it. That's why these videos are going to be so long, is because I'm not going to tell you directly to despise these people. I'm not going to tell you, not the people, the mindset. The dead man is a mindset. I won't tell you to despise the person. I won't even tell you to despise the mindset. I'm going to come here and I'm going to say exactly what I think they get wrong on such a fundamental level that hopefully you'll get a second perspective onto how we can possibly look at this perspective that people have. Because there has been no rebuttal to people that appear quote-unquote vulnerable. People that make themselves vulnerable, make themselves victim, so then they don't have to get a rebuttal. No, we're going to give a second opinion, and we're going to give a solid opinion. You choose what you think about the world on your own time. And I mean, that last 2 minutes wasn't even a part of the pitch. I just threw that in there because I thought it was necessary. And I mean, this applies to everyone who creates a scapegoat for any of their problems, right? The red pill has the women, society, the matrix, right? On the other side, it's men, the patriarchy, fucking whatever. It's literally the same thing. The patriarchy is just women's matrix. And of course, you have men and women. And you can't just blame it. It's like, oh, fuck, there's so much. It's like, so people get so close to finding out that they can be responsible for something. They get every single bullet point correct, and then they shift the blame to somebody else because it would be embarrassing to say, oh, I can just do something about it. And by the way, like, there are so many of these fucking videos. I had a browser of tabs open, and there was like 50 to 70 YouTube videos that I just kept getting recommended after I clicked one of them. That's like, I hate life. Life is meaningless. I have no friends. Life sucks. I'm not cut out for this shit. And this one that I chose today was one of the more unhinged ones, I would say. He falls for every single trope that I've ever written about, and we're going to get into that.
Yep. Here I am. Stuck in a world I don't want to be in anymore. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, today I am here with you guys because I wanted to talk about the fact that life is and always will be random and meaningless.
I get the feeling that this guy's going to be pulling a lot of heavy punches out of me for the remainder of this entire video. So let's just get this out of the way. This is probably going to be a little bit more over the top than you guys want to hear, but we're going to inspect this, right? He says that he doesn't want to be here. And something I say is that everything that you don't want is directly correlated to something you do want, but you sort of don't want to admit that you want it, in very, very simplistic terms. But then he also says, I wanted to talk to you guys about the fact that life is meaningless. What is those two things? You might say, somebody pretentious with the philosophy and the logic shit might say this, like, oh, he said that he doesn't want to be here, but he said that he does want this thing. And here's where I disagree. He is saying the same thing with both of those statements. He wants to be here to say that thing in the context of the world that he wants to be in his fantasy. And I might have to restate this a few times before it gets really clear. If I could just write out a sentence and make it all make sense initially, I would do it. But he doesn't want to be here in this world, the reality that he is forced to observe that doesn't cohere with his vision of how things should be. His grand excuse. But he does want to tell you about how things should be. If you believe him and his perspective of the world as it should be, he gets to hold out hope that his fantasy is still viable. So him saying he doesn't want to be here and him saying that he wants to tell you about something, those two things go along with each other perfectly. He's not lying. He doesn't want to be here, but he wants you to be where he is in a situation that you also don't want to be in reality. That's the biggest issue about videos like this. It creates a sense of community around despair, around misery, around perpetuating misery. If you have something that's very, very easy to complain about, usually that means it's also very, very easy to address. And if you don't feel like addressing it, you can just go get validation for that situation. Somebody that tells you that you actually don't need to do anything about your problems. And it's as simple as posting a YouTube video. If you get a single like on that YouTube video, you think to yourself, one person agrees with me. One person. And that's all I need. Because I know that I'm not totally false about this. But the problem is that you not only get people that agree with you in this kind of spreading the message, sort of networking for the dead man, you also get new people who might have been on the fence about this shit, people who might be enjoying life, but they might be going through a bad moment. And any inkling of thought that would have sent them down a path towards really embracing the fact that the fact, quote unquote, that they cannot change anything, anybody who might have turned away from that, from positive reinforcement, because if they just see somebody else in that position being able to make a change, then they might have gone the other way. And it's very, very difficult to see the positive tipping point. It is very, very easy to see the negative tipping point, the point where your life goes to shit. We like to forget the bad things that happen to us. We don't like to say, oh yeah, I used to be in a terrible state of mind. I was depressed. I was suicidal. They put me in a mental hospital. And, yeah, over this long course of time, this immense gradient over years, I managed to stick to a certain mindset, hold myself accountable to things, and eventually reach the place where I just did so many things with my life that were positive, that the sheer magnitude of memories in that vein outweighed the negative ones, and I kind of literally just forgot it. And that's why I'm in the place that I'm in. On the negative side, however, you can look back retrospectively and give negative connotation to memories. And also, the tipping point for a lot of people is a place where it's a singular event, that they can pin it on a singular event. And for some people, like this guy, he'll say it later, I'm sure. If not, it's a video on his channel that is not in here. But the tipping point for him, he says, is that he was born. That's when the issues started. And I think that's bullshit. But anyways, the point is that once you get to that quote-unquote tipping point, and it's not like the positive one where it's spread over the span of half a decade, you can have a single hour that defines your entire tragedy, and then you can retrospectively look back and assign everything also misery. And say that, oh, it just built up to this one moment, and you can't really do that for the positive side of things. That's honestly kind of why I'm here. Trying to explain this shit. In reality, the shift between the two isn't that much different. Except, when you're miserable, it is miserable to be happy, and therefore it is very easy to just stack on loads and loads and loads of miserable events back to back to back, because they reinforce each other. Because when you're upset about something, you don't want to feel like there's no reason to be upset. You don't want to feel like the reason is past, or that it's insignificant, or that, oh, well, that thing happened and now you can do something else. No, it's not a fun mindset, but it's the mindset that you have to get into at some point. So the only way that people can keep justifying it to themselves to get the proper, like, expected compensation, we might say, for their misery, they have to keep having miseries. Right? That little event that got stretched out just a bit too long to where people were like, yeah, dude, I don't know, get back on the horse. That in itself is miserable enough to make themselves be like, fine, dude, fuck it. I'll just prove you wrong. And then they stumble in half ignorance into some other unfortunate event in their life. And then this becomes a cycle. Because people are like just slightly not sensitive enough to giving them the emotional validation that they quote-unquote deserve. On the other hand, on the positive side of things, you get no feedback. Absolutely none. It's just it's a slog of keeping yourself in check for years and years and years and years and years until you eventually, like, forget this misaligned perception in your head that you need things to quote-unquote go right for you. You get to a point where you're just living, experiencing. You're not in your head trying to evaluate things. Because the evaluation in itself can make things more miserable than they are. Because once you evaluate one day, right, everything else has to be compared to that. And just the evaluation in and of itself can ruin so much. If you didn't evaluate it, there's a good chance you won't even remember it, right? That's like embarrassment. 0 out of 10 experience. You can't really avoid that. Embarrassment, awful, terrible. You will remember those moments. But it's like taking that experience of embarrassment and applying it to every single thing that happens in your life to one degree or another. And when you forget to evaluate the good moments because you're so focused on the bad ones, guess what your memory fills up with? Guess what your mind fills up with? Guess what becomes the only things that you recognize, your pattern recognition locks onto? The negative. And then you get to a point where you have absolutely no fucking clue what you want to do other than to avoid those supposed situations that give you this weird evaluation that you evaluate yourself on. You don't want to be evaluated by yourself, so you start avoiding everything. You want to not do things, right? You want to not be in this world because there is a way that events could have gone. Therefore, there's a world as things should have gone, right? Which means that you're not in the right quote-unquote timeline. It's bullshit. What is this religion? What is this faith that I'm not on the right timeline? Things could have gone better. No, they couldn't have. things can go better. It's the only way it can go. Once you start living in this mindset that you can alter the past, you start doing it in your memories. You start forgetting that you can alter the future and that the past influences the future by reminding you of what not to do. Next time it can go better, but last time it can't be changed. Very simple, seems obvious, but this slips under the radar, obviously. It goes into complete conscious ignorance mode where people know these things on the surface level, but they still think about it under the surface. And then you get strange statements like, I don't want to be in this world, but I want to tell you guys about something, right? Wanting to do anything in this world implies that you want to be in this world, right? Again, that's the facetious answer. But the thing is that he just wants to be in the fantasy world where there's no self-evaluation, where there's no need to learn from mistakes, to make mistakes, to learn from them, where there's endless validation for everything. And he wants you to be a part of it because you, the additional community, the orientation, having place in the universe, so to say, that can only be had for him, right? Remember, because nothing can change, that can only be had for him if you join him. And before I move on, I need to address, like, the thing where the people are going to ask, why do you think this guy wants validation instead of solutions? Why do you think that he doesn't want to enjoy life? And I think that's very, very simple. And it comes back to this whole, like, community orientation thing. The easiest way to find company is through misery. Misery loves company. It's fairly simple. But why is it easy? That's a great question. Thank you for asking. It is easy because you can make superficial statements like life is meaningless, and if somebody agrees with you, right, once you get to that moment where somebody really agrees with you on something that just, I mean, frankly, isn't true or just is not provable that it can be true or can't be true on the same note, then you come to this realization like, oh, by altering the perceptions of others, I can change reality. Right? Because once somebody agrees with you, it's real. You get to live in that world. You get validation. And suddenly, you've solved the problem by removing sort of the ability to solve the problem. Like, you tell yourself, I don't have to worry about it because it can't be fixed. And it's so very terribly easy to get to that point. And you don't even do it with intent. Like, you just express your frustrations and somebody agrees with you and you're like, oh shit, I'm right. Again, not explicitly in your head. The belief just becomes calcified. And then you find more and more reasons to keep validating that. It becomes a cyclical loop, right? Where you create the belief about a problem and then it can't be fixed. And then you defend that until eventually you have to create another problem that can't be solved. And then you defend that and you get a sense of purpose from it. But it's so temporary and it's so shaky. And if you base your beliefs on something that eventually will not benefit you in the future, right? And it's safe to assume that this mindset is going to make you bitter and sad in the long run, even if it does temporarily give you purpose, then you're going to get to a point where you try to build too much on top of a shaky foundation, and it all comes crashing down. The point where you have to avoid so many obvious things. In reality, I'm not saying like things that you can look up on the internet, things that people will tell you. I mean like things that you see and hear with your eyes. You have to physically ignore reality. And I hypothesize that that's why people say like, oh, the world isn't as vivid as it was when I was a child. And I think it's because people aren't looking. Because the world is full of things that will disprove the way that people think about reality itself. They have to avoid looking. Stop and smell the roses is literally like, look, isn't the flower beautiful? And you sniff it and you say yes. And then next time you say, there's nothing good in the world, somebody will say, remember that beautiful flower? And you'll be like, yo, shut the fuck up, man. But you'll know. At that point, you'll know. And then you'll start having to deal with the fact that you are responsible for your perspective. So we've got a handful of things here, is that he's got his perspective that life is meaningless because he had a perspective once long ago that he never took the second opinion on. He never wanted to double check, but he was forced to. He had this perspective that things were supposed to be a certain way, that things should have gone a certain way. Because they didn't go a certain way, it is meaningless. And because he's holding on to that prior perspective, it becomes a fantasy. And reality becomes a dystopia of sorts. Now, you can't quite go into that fantasy, right? Like he said in the very, very, very beginning clip, there's no escape. And I took that from the middle of the video. But there is no escape from the current reality that he's in, because he wants to go to the fantasy. And also because you can't really admit that you want to go into fantasy, because that's embarrassing. People will tell you you cannot do that. And then you get another perspective where you're like, oh, everybody says that I can't do the things that I want to do. And that's a whole tangent. You have to go with the other fantasy, which is ironically that the world is a terrible place and everything is meaningless. That is also a fantasy, but it's one that you can live in. And because you can't gather community to go towards the utopian fantasy, you're stuck with the option of, I have to bring people into the fantasy perspective, right? Sorry, stuttering. The fantasy perspective, which is this experience that I'm living in, this set of decisions that makes this for me. Somehow, I need to get people to stand next to me in my shoes, so that I can have company while I'm here. There's no way to escape, supposedly. He can't escape to the fantasy of how things should be, and he can't escape from the fantasy of how things are. Because his only solution to escaping the way that things are is to have things as they should be. And because he knows that that cannot happen, he closes the loop for himself, making the idea of a solution, of something different, completely unfeasible in his mind. Right? Because he's validated that nothing can change, he will not change anything. So, he's he's predisposed to pursue finding that sense of orientation by bringing other people to where he is standing. Because, right, the natural assumption that is that if this is how things are, if things cannot change, everybody is here with me already. They just have not realized it.
Now, none of us are the people that we want to be. None of us are at our full potential.
And here we are. This statement that none of us are at our full potential is something that cannot be disproved. It's a case that can be made for everybody. We always want more. That's part of the human condition, is wanting. But it's also something that should not... should. Oh, good grief. I just said the S word. Should. It is something that, for most people, does not immediately validate the perspective that life is meaningless. Because we know we're never going to get to that point. But the problem is that if we never try to get to that point, we'll never really feel anything. Like it's very much more likely to say that life will be meaningless if we actually reach our full potential, because then what is there to do? Life is about doing things, more or less. Right, there's a lot of single sentence statements that you can fit life into, and that's a decent one, is that life is about doing things. But really, this comes back to the point where he's trying to create a sense of community around misery, right? Associating you with meaningless life. Because you will never reach your full potential, life is meaningless. And you have not reached your full potential there, buddy. But I mean, what is there to do? Like, if you say, I haven't reached my full potential, and if you are any other age than dead, that is a good thing, because that means you still have things to do. If you're 20, if you're my age, and you say that life is meaningless because I have not reached my full potential, I'm going to say you're full of shit. Of course you haven't reached your full potential. You haven't even started cultivating your potential, right? Most people have not even begun to think about what they want in life. Not in the fantasy, in life. What do you want to do, right? That's how you know what your quote-unquote full potential is, right? That's where you gather the compass needle and point it towards the thing that you need to start building the capability to have the potential to do that thing. Almost nobody, sorry, it's such a broad statement, it's not almost everybody. A lot of fucking people never figure out what they want here, now, later in life, anywhere within the time span of conception to rotting in their grave and the last particle has turned to dust, right? In the time span of from dust ye came to dust ye shall return, they don't consider what they actually wanted to do, outside of maybe getting stimulation within their head, right? That short-term gratification that everybody on YouTube podcasts talks about. And that's a real big deal. That's a really big deal. Because that's not a want. That's not a human desire. That's a human impulse, an instinct. Like just something that we gravitate towards and lash out at. It's like a monkey picking berries. It's like us going to the McDonald's drive-thru. That isn't a human desire per se. If we're gonna define human desire as having purpose, do you want your purpose to be the McDonald's drive-thru, rotting, sitting around, doing nothing? Because that is a big problem. A lot of people want to do generally nothing, and they have a belief in nothing, right? Nothing comes after death. Nothing came before. There is nothing to do. There is nothing to strive for. There's nothing for me in this situation. Nothing. Nobody has anything to offer me. There are no opportunities for me. Things never work out. They have a lot of faith in nothing, in the concept that there isn't something there that could be had. And so they choose to pick berries and say, where is purpose? Where is meaning? I can't find it in my impulses. Yes, that is because it is not there. You have to create it. If you want the concept of anything remotely related to your quote-unquote full potential, your full potential implies that there is something that you're going to use that for. You can't have full potential for the picking berries activities, right? You can't unlock your full potential for gooning. You can't unlock your full potential for taking as many drugs as possible, right? You get overdose. You get porn addiction. You get a sad death. That's what maximizing your potential for pursuing your impulses is death. And I get it. That's how people come to this conclusion, is because they say, oh, I want a purpose, and it needs to relate to the things that always satisfy me, always jiggle my beans, always get me really cranking, you know? But no, this purpose thing, this is about finding meaning in suffering. There is a word that is somewhat archaic now, and it's called ardor. Ardor is the struggles that lead to the things that ultimately satisfy us, right? The ardors of love, arguing with your spouse and making sure things work out right. Right now I'm literally waggling around my fist like a retarded politician But there's this, it's about, oh, you want purpose, you're not going to find it in impulses. Name me one person that followed their impulses to purpose, to something that ultimately satisfied them in a way that their impulses couldn't. It doesn't exist. That person, he's not there. Like, do you think Jack Kerouac died happily? This is a trope, is that it always comes back, it really, all roads lead back to Rome. Rome and the degeneracy and the fall of the empire, and this is a trope, is that people that indulge in their pleasures, the ones that are really, really fucking good at it, the ones that we envy, it is a trope that they always fall into a miserable later part of their life when they're no longer capable of pursuing the hose or doing insane amounts of drugs, and now their body is breaking down, their immune system's fried, or they're just senile or something like that, and right, they've really got nothing to pass on. That is a trope. We make fun of these people that are so good at pursuing their impulses that they almost create a career out of it, and we make fun of them because we're jealous of them. Everybody wants to do that. Everybody, me included. That would be fantastic. But it's the reminder that at the end of it all, you still lose. That gets people. And it's our jealousy and malice, in fact, envy towards these people that makes us point these things out and ultimately saves us from pursuing that fate sometimes, when we're aware of it. But seriously, the potential thing. We are not who we want to be. We have not reached our full potential. And therefore, life is meaningless. No, you cannot reach your full potential. You cannot become who you want to be without meaning. This is a this is an egg lays a chicken scenario. You're getting it backwards. Sort of putting the cart before the horse. If you don't pursue meaning, if you don't believe in meaning, you cannot become who you want to be because you cannot create meaning that would allow that to happen. You cannot have the potential to be that person. You cannot have the experiences of that person. You cannot have that wonderful infinite pursuit, the ardors and payoffs, the joy in knowing that things eventually pay off. And if they don't, you do it anyways because it eventually pays off. If you're able to correct your mistakes, if you believe that circumstances can be changed, if you believe that reality is not some fucking wasteland that's random. Right? If it's random, you can think to yourself, it will always fail. It will always fail. Even if it won't, even if that's not something that is actually possible, because if you look at a game of chance, of random event, you can't lose 1,000,000 times in a row. If you're rolling dice and you're wrong 1,000,000 times in a row, you are the luckiest person on the planet. Those are unfeasible odds. Now, the way that they get around it is by saying that you don't get to choose at every point in your life. The only roll of the dice that you got was at birth, which is bullshit. That was the first roll of the dice. Every single choice and action that you make, every mistake going forward is the next roll. And you can roll again. And this is assuming that we build a model on chance. The thing is that it's more like any acquired skill. Right? If you're playing baseball, you hit the ball with the bat. If you swing and miss, right? This is an actual term for doing things in real life. Sometimes you swing and miss. Literally. If you swing and miss, and you swing and miss, and you swing and miss, eventually you're going to get to a point where you hit the ball on accident, and then you get to a point where you can reliably hit the ball a certain percentage of the time, and then you get to the point where you hit the ball so often it becomes muscle memory. But if two people have the same amount of swings and one person has reached muscle memory and the other is still missing shots, it is safe to assume that they are missing those shots on purpose. Maybe not consciously, but maybe the person is like, oh, if I just swing down here every single time, it never hits, right? And then people are like, oh, look, what a spectacle. This man can never hit the ball. And then the person says, yes, isn't that unfortunate? And they say, here, have our pity, our sympathy, or they laugh at him, and then somebody else comes along and doesn't like the fact that they're laughing at him and then gives him pity. Or somebody else who doesn't like swinging and hitting comes along and gives them a sense of community. Again and again. It's an acquired skill. If you cannot have any potential, right, let's discard the argument that we can reach our full potential. That's a non-argument whatsoever. You cannot. That's a good thing. It means you have stuff to do. Let's say if you want any potential to do something that you want to do, if you want to get that potential, you're going to have to start creating a reason to aim at the ball instead of just swinging, because that is an important part. If we've got this perspective that I don't want to be in this world anymore, and the justification for not wanting to be in this world anymore is your tragedy, then you're not going to aim at the ball. Especially if you don't think anything can change. You're going to swing below it, you're going to swing above it. Sometimes you won't even swing at all. Because what's the point? But if you assign no meaning to the thing that you're swinging at, you're never going to aim at it. It will be random. Because let's say this guy wanted to go and potentially have a girlfriend, to have a relationship, to have a wife, to have children, to have kids, to die a grandfather, let's say. And we know he doesn't want those things, but let's hypothetically say that. If he goes up to a woman and has those long-term intentions and plans in the back of his head, he will have already thought about what he's going to say, and he won't have some generic YouTube tutorial answer to questions and statements. But if, like a lot of people in the situation that this guy's in, he doesn't actually want those things, and he sort of isn't sure why he wants a relationship, he just knows that, right, there's some impulse to do that, then he's going to swing randomly. He's going to use the most basic generic stuff, and it will be so obvious that it won't work. It'll be like random chance. Because these fumbling idiots, we might call them in these situations, the thing that we say, that women say about men like this, that they actually go along with, is giving them a chance, right? They're leaving it to randomness. They're trying to have somebody give them a chance. They're trying to take something. They have nothing to offer. They don't want anything out of life later on past sex or whatever, so they have nothing to give for that. They have nothing, no social currency in the bank to pay for what they want, because they never actually stopped to think about what they wanted. So now they have to live with this hope that they'll receive an opportunity, they'll be given a chance, and it will work out in a way that they quote-unquote want. Something that they haven't thought about. Right? It's like this mindset that I'm going to wait for things to happen to me, and if I like it, I'll go along with it. If I don't, I won't. With that mindset, you always fail. Especially if you're focused on the negative things like we were talking about earlier, because you'll focus on the negative things and you'll see something immediately, very soon, I should say, that you don't want. And you won't go along with it. Right? If you awkwardly waddle up to a woman and say, "Hi, how are you today?" and she gives you a weird look because you're being weird, you don't want to receive that look. And suddenly with this like dead man's mindset, you've obliterated that opportunity for yourself, if not set it up for obliteration. Right? You've set the charges, especially if you think that this is going to be a recurring event. Allowing things to be random will screw you over 100% every single time, over and over and over again. You don't want things, you do things anyways, they don't work out because you have no intuitional basis to go off of. It doesn't go the way you wanted. It reaffirms your belief that nothing can change, and you do it over and over and over again. And you allow things to be random, never gaining any set of skills, by never having any wants, no desires, nothing to create that purpose. You see how this is so, it loops around and around and around? I keep having to say things over and over and relating them back to other things, because this really is one of the most convoluted mindsets that will say any bullshit to get out of something that we think in our mind. They shouldn't be trying to do that. Why are they doing that? That doesn't seem like what they want. Like, it is to your detriment, buddy. So, by going around in these cycles, I'm trying to create patterns. If you start to see the patterns, you'll start to see the bigger picture. You'll start to see why this seemingly simple crash out is such a big fucking problem. Not just annoying, but a problem. And sorry, I shouldn't be saying this, because my idea is that if you take my words at face value, then eventually over time, these things will become not true, because people will change the way that they talk about things. And then if you stick to this, then it becomes a dogma, and then this and that happens. So don't take what I say at face value, but try to recognize the patterns for what they are. See if these patterns make sense to you, and recognize that they will change, they will adapt, they'll keep becoming convoluted, and it's the pursuit of keeping up with these patterns that is the real thing that is sort of worth pursuing if you want to avoid similar mistakes. But again, this might not always be true. Chances are it won't be. Almost every philosophy has become wrong, because context has changed so much, and then we have to adjust context for it, and then we spend all of our time trying to rearrange our beliefs in a way that we can even sell it to people that aren't interested in the first place because of the changed context. And I gotta specify about the desires, the impulses, and the purpose type of deal. Like, imagine the impulses are the what that you're doing. And it could be anything. It could be related to a purpose. It's the impulse to go and just do, act, right? That is the what. That's not the reason why people are depressed. It's not the what, it's the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And that comes over to, like, why do you want to have sex? Why do you want that fast car? And let's just do the sex thing, because it's very easy to explain. If you want intercourse for the purpose of having a child, so then you can have some sense of continuity, to be remembered, to have somebody that can take care of you when you're older, to be able to make somebody else happy, and to be around somebody that is happy, to be able to have permission to give somebody a sense of joy and security, then you have a solid why. And that solid why makes the what more feasible, because other people will want to be engaged when you want to give them something good, because you will get something good in return, right? It's about the giving, not the impulse is about the taking. Like, what am I taking? The purpose is the why. Why am I taking? And, like, how can I make this beneficial? Like, how can I reconcile myself with this? Like, that I know sort of if I do this, then things will go along this certain path. And even if they don't, I will feel good about sticking to this idea, right? If I stay loyal and true, then I can feel good about that even if things don't work out, and I will do my best. Look at that. Then you have a reason why. And then if you have that set in your mind, you'll know how you want to treat that person that you want to go after. And then it won't just be about the sex. And then they won't feel so awkward around you. Because they'll know that inevitably, like, right, there's this feeling, you can get this intuition when talking to other people, like what they want from you. We don't like being around people that just want things from us, that won't give us anything other than the superficial, the temporary, those instant gratification things. You can sense when somebody wants to actually potentially have you around for the sake of having the same person around, for having the same sense of continuity, for the loyalty that they want and are willing to give, for the sake of having that person around to make them happy so then they can be happy, to set up this loop of mutual exchange, this service that they give and then receive, where both people prioritize giving. And I mean, maybe not both people. I mean, you can be the one that gives. And if you give, you can feel good about that, even if you don't get. Don't fucking bring up love languages on me. Don't fucking do it. Giving relates to anything, not gifts. Not it's all of them. Right? Physical touch, time together, whatever. Anyways, shut up about that. It's just a framework. But that meaning is the why. And usually if you introduce this idea to somebody that's like, I'm not going to go after a relationship, it's all superficial, it's this and that and this and that. The really cringy thing to say is that they're projecting. Is because they want their cake and eat it too. They want the relationship. They don't want the commitment. They want the person that takes care of them. They don't want somebody nagging on them, right? Every quality has its opposite side, right? If somebody's trusting, they're also gullible. If somebody is skeptical, they're also mistrusting. If somebody is honest, then they're also mean. Back and forth and back and forth. But they want just the positive quality that they want. Which ironically, just by wanting a simple thing, it's like, oh, I just want the bare minimum, dude. You want one simple thing? The problem is that is the unrealistic scenario. You can't have the one simple thing without the flip side. You cannot have somebody burning their energy, burning their candle on giving you the positive aspect of this trait without eventually burning out and letting out the negative side of it. It's not doable. It's unrealistic. So, ironically, wanting the simple thing, quote unquote, is the hardest thing to get. But it's not simple. So, I mean, we can't really say that. They say, I want the bare minimum. They say it's simple, but it's not. It's the more convoluted thing, the more convoluted aspect. If you just say that you want to have somebody to be around for the good and the bad, more or less, very, very, very simple terms, you get the good along with the bad. But if you just want the good, you can't have it. Because the first sign of something that you don't like, you leave, and you never get the good thing again. And then if you see the likelihood of a bad thing, quote unquote, in somebody, you're going to leave. But ironically, the signs for those bad things are also the flip side for a positive trait that you might like. If somebody's unhinged and crazy, they're usually also fun. Right? Like, what are you willing to deal with? How much are you willing to pay for what you want? Do you know what you want? You got to have the why. You got to invest in the why. That long term, you can't just say, oh, let's start something, see where it goes. No, you got to say up front, this is, at least you got to have it in the back of your mind. Like, I intend to do this, whether or not I actually say it. And then you treat that person like you intend to do that. And then they're more likely to be the person that will be more accepting of that really big long-term commitment. Right? That is creating the meaning to that scenario. creating the meaning basically for somebody else in that situation. And I mean, it goes even further. Like, what can I offer to the world? If you want to really have a sense of meaning, make something that people find valuable. Right? That applies across the board. You make something people find valuable, people find you valuable, you have a place, you have a purpose, you have a service, you have meaning. Do something for others. If your sense of meaning is what can be done for you, you're fucked. Because people don't ask, usually, what can I do for them? All the time. If they do think that, it is not all the time. Usually, and this is why this type of person oftentimes doesn't have very many friends, is that people usually say, I'm going to see what I can do for them a handful of times. And then, if it's like an unrealistic amount of times, like let's say they never return anything ever over the course of years, then they're gonna just dip. Just straight up. So, I mean, if you expect other people to do it, you had better fucking be ready to do that yourself. Right? If you want meaning, follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And most importantly, don't expect others to do unto you what you want them to. All the time.
This world is not at its full potential.
Dude, I am making the original point so fucking hard to follow. Oh my gosh. I do not apologize. This is how it is. You don't like you like this content, you will. You'll get the value out of it. That's not a suggestion. I'm not saying that, like, you will, as in, like, you might. No, you will. You're going to enjoy this. Stay. Good boy. Anyways, the world is not at its full potential. Quite literally, the world is not as it should be. Its full potential. The world cannot reach its full potential. Like, even just the assumption in any faith denies the ability for the world to ever reach its full potential. If you believe in evolution, then the world will never be at its full potential. It'll constantly be in a state of evolution. If you believe in God, any of the gods, then the world needs... The world will always be flawed. That means that the world can always be made a better place. It means it's never at its full potential. Which is what he's saying. The implication, however, of the world not being at its full potential, like we talked about, is not that there is no meaning. Right? Can we discuss this sterile concept of the perfect utopia? Like, it's an abstract notion that you can say, well, the perfect world wouldn't have any crime, there wouldn't be any pain, there would always be things to do, there'd be this. You cannot make it happen. That is not the world's full potential. It's an abstract idea that you cannot even begin to illustrate, because if you try to add any detail whatsoever, it becomes obvious what the trade-offs are, and the trade-offs themselves make it not optimal, not utopia. And even if we're just going for optimization purposes, still, that is something for you to do. You can find a way to optimize the world. If you can't have an impact, no one can. And I tell you what, buddy, you are having an impact right now, and it's negative. It's not good. You're convincing people that there is no meaning in the world, or at least you're validating the perception that there is meaninglessness. And when you have meaninglessness, when you have the perception of meaninglessness, nobody is going to try to improve the world, because they believe that it won't reach its full potential. It can't reach its full potential. For some reason, they're entitled to have it at its full potential now. What? And again, what would you do in this perfect world? Fun things? Things that didn't cause anybody pain, that we're just chill and we're just hanging around? What does that mean? That's fucking boring. The more you try to illustrate it, the more it sounds like staring at a blank wall, because you can't irritate anybody, you can't do triggers, and then once you get to that point, then the pendulum swings back and you're stuck in deprivation and insanity. Right? Removing the humanity from situations. This is the way it is with laws. Right? Bad things happen, we create laws. Laws become bad things because they prevent us from doing things that we want to do. And then we stop having those laws, and for a while it's fine, and then we like, okay, bad things are happening again, let's start making more laws. Like, the worst thing to happen at my elementary school was that they made it so that we could not do backflips off of the swings, we could not play a tag, we could not play fight, we could not climb on the school equipment outside of the bar things, right? The play castle, you couldn't climb up the side of it, you had to walk up the stairs, orderly fashion, go down the slide, orderly, in a way that will not cause any harm to anybody, and then you have to go back up and do it again, otherwise, nope, you cannot touch it. That is a perfect example, right? You make the rules to make the playground safe, and eventually the playground becomes useless. You try to make the world a better place by implementing wishes and wants, and eventually you make it so nobody can do anything, and you make it into a fucking nightmare, that fucking hellscape that you said that Earth was. So why not focus on what you can do to fix the things that you don't like about the world? And he tries to do this. He doesn't like that people are here. He has another video on his YouTube channel about antinatalism, and I'm not sure if he talks about it in this video. We'll address it if we get there, but that's not good for the progress of the world towards any standard, unless you believe that humanity is a plague of some sort, that we cause more, right? The philosophy is that life causes more suffering than pleasure. It's like utilitarian taken to the extreme, but we know that utilitarianism doesn't work, because if you try to maximize pleasure and reduce pain, you get a net negative that's somewhere akin to the numbness that we feel when we're scrolling on our phone for 5 hours straight, because it's the pain that makes the pleasure worthwhile. You want to make somebody really appreciate life? Put them in a concentration camp and like torture them every single day for like 5 years, and then just let them out into the world. No, that might not actually work, because then they'd be like, that was fucking pointless. The world is really a bad place. No, you have to give them the idea that they were saved, or that they escaped. Right? There has to be there still has to be the perception that what you're going through is worth it in the end. So yeah, that wouldn't work, but you get the idea. You have to go through the suffering in a way that you think that in some way this will benefit me, and I'm a fucking badass for putting up with this shit, and nobody can tell me otherwise. And then you get there. But no, the world is not at its full potential. That's a great thing. That means that you can do good things, and not antinatalism. Antinatalism. On some level, I hate this belief, but I'm also fine with it, because it usually means that people like this won't reproduce. But the idea keeps coming back generationally. After a period of like, it dies down because they fucking die, and then nobody's there to pass on the idea, and then there becomes another generation of people looking for a problem, and then they use that as their solution, and it just keeps perpetuating. But I guess it is a way for them to remove themselves from the pool. But right now they're on the internet a lot, and they're reaching a lot more people that they otherwise wouldn't have. So I'm going to say that even though it does sort of help us out in the long term by getting rid of some of the negativity, I'm going to say that it's fucking stupid also on principle, by the principles of the people that are trying to follow it. Because generally I think that, you should be aware. If you were really trying to maximize the pleasure in life, you would be also trying to maximize your suffering to a certain extent. And not like suffering without a point, suffering with a point. Like, I'm going to do this thing over and over so I can get really good at it, so I can do this thing, so I can do that. Like, I'm gonna be unemployed, and I'm gonna be called lazy by everybody, so then I can go and learn how to make music and do that for 5 years, and nobody will believe me, and it'll suck, and I'll suffer, and I'll doubt myself, and I might not even be able to do it, but I'm gonna do it because if I get to that point, then there was a purpose behind it all. You know what I'm saying? I gotta stop saying that. I can't say, you know what I'm saying? Like you're supposed to agree. That's like me trying to imprint it in your brain subconsciously. No. Doubt me. Doubt me. You do not know what I'm saying because what I'm saying is bullshit. Don't listen to me.
Humanity is slowly collapsing day by day.
It's his perception of humanity that's slowly collapsing day by day. And I will request that you try to keep in mind the concepts that I bring up frequently throughout these episodes. If you're planning on, I mean, if you're an hour and 5 minutes in already, you're probably likely to watch more than one of these. So the ideas that I keep bringing up, like, keep them in mind. Like what I say about perceptions per se, this is a very important bit, is that perceptions come from our experiences and then form our beliefs, but our beliefs can also influence how we have perceptions of our experiences, and that can change a lot about how we see reality and interact with reality and seek out certain experiences within reality that align with our beliefs, even if they're negative. So there's that. When we go through life, if we just hold on to the ideas that we gain in childhood, right, the eternal child mindset, we might say, it might not be directly related, but if we have ideas of the way that the world should be, and we have ideas of the way that people are as a kid, right, we're told that everybody is supposed to be nice and kind and helpful, and then we grow up and learn that they aren't, and we never take the second opinion that this is okay, that nobody can do that all the time. We never take we never reconsider that idea, and we just think that people should be like this, even though we know that they're not. We end up realizing this within the world, and the longer we're alive, the worse things that we see, and the more evidence for those worst things that we see in comparison to our previous beliefs that we still hold, that we never reevaluated, that we never adjusted to actually make us literally well adjusted in life. So it's awkward. We get in an awkward situation where it seems like the world is falling apart, and every single generation has this. It's hilarious. I remember reading a biography of George Washington, and after George Washington's first term, the political atmosphere of the time was exactly the same as it was today. Like people saying, "Oh, this is the end. This is the end of the Union. This is the end of the whatever. It's all going to go downhill because of this one issue." And the opponent is literally the devil. They're pedophiles and this and that. And it was so funny to me because I'm like, this whole idea that the world is going to go downhill because the way that I think isn't aligning with reality, and there might be other options, and my sort of fantasy of how things should be keeps getting invalidated. This means that the world is going downhill. It's hilarious to me that that's survived for so long, and every generation has those motherfuckers, those just the doomers. The absolute, what, it's such a weird sense of purpose. Like, you get this as, what you want to do with your life. This is the way that you want to see things. Like, you just stop, reevaluate for half a second. It's like, why do I think this? Just ask yourself why, 5 or 6 times, and keep answering it. Do a bit of journaling if you have to. Holy shit! Because if you keep having these perceptions, the fantasy will persist, and it will lock you out of reality and lock you away from the things that you want within it. It's not optimal. It is not optimal, and it does not create a milieu that is auspicious for a world that is at its full potential. It's so fucking retarded.
It's all just a fucking wasteland now. Nothing good exists anymore. Basically, we're all just slowly dying and going to hell, even though we're already living in hell. So basically, I don't get how people think life has any meaning, or life has no life is just like, anything that happens, nothing is a coincidence. Everything has meaning, and there's destiny and there's fate. All of this is bullshit. None of that is real.
Meaning, definition, meanings, the meaning of something, the definition of something, something that you define, a definition that you write out. You define something. You give it meaning by defining it. The process of writing out the definition is not complete until you're dead. The process of defining who you want to be is a lifelong process, and the definition is not something that can benefit you. Moreover, this is a bit of a mindfuck. You don't believe in fate because you believe fate is tied with meaning. But meaninglessness is an absolute. It's a certainty. That is a fate that you can be victim to, you might say. Fate creates victims. The world that you draw has victims, not participants. Defining something, giving something meaning, has somebody participating in it. Fate is predetermined, meaning you can't meaning you can't define it. It's already defined. It's already written. No, meaninglessness is the belief in fate, in everything happening for a reason, except for that reason is shit, because the entity that you're praying to is randomness for some fucking reason.
Fate is not real. Destiny is not real. And life itself has no meaning, and everything just randomly happens and we can't control it,
I've recently gotten in the bad habit of saying, at the end of certain statements. Like, I'm desperate for people to agree with me. And I've realized that all the people that have used this phrase in my life are like people that really need the constant reassurance that their opinion is validated, which checks out for this guy. He's got a bit of a niche view, or at least one that isn't spoken about all too often or openly. So that checks out. But the real reason behind good grief. But I think the real issue behind this display is like not the message that life is random and meaningless. Not this guy's YouTube video, the fact that he wants to make it, that he's putting it out there for people to see for the reason that he's doing it. It's that he's saying that, no, oh my gosh, there is a reason he's doing it. You say there's no meaning. Why are you telling us? You have a reason to do things. You turning on this camera and fucking recording isn't random. This isn't some random act of bullshit. I mean, you continue to make these videos. There are more of them. You continue to share your ideas as if they matter. Do your ideas matter? If not, then you can stop sharing them. I love it when... because every philosophical system... basically every system of thought in existence, if you go deep enough into the details, they start contradicting themselves. But there are so few that contradict themselves on the surface level so blatantly, not on like words, but on actual principle. They contradict themselves so hard, like right off the fucking bat, and to get away with it, it's astounding to me. And I know why they get away with it. It's because there's this level of obfuscation that's put into place. And like I was talking about earlier, they say things that are technically correct and then relate them to things that align with their beliefs. Like, nobody has reached their full potential. The world has not reached its full potential. Yes, but true. But the only thing that's meaningless is those statements. It's not a bad thing. That gives you things to do. Unless you don't want something to do, then, I don't know. You get to a point. You always get to a point with these individuals where you just start going in circles. And I've already said this. And we're like not even a minute into the fucking video. Holy shit. Hour and 35 minutes. No, sorry, hour 15 minutes. Wow, that's impressive. That's too much yapping per response. No, it's not. Perfect amount. Have you ever met one of those pacifists that are openly fine with terrible things happening to people they love right in front of them just because they want to stick to their doctrine so badly? Right? And then you ask them, like, okay, well, what's the doctrine? They're like, well, no violence ever. And you say, okay, well, you're enabling this violence in front of you. Like, this person, one person that you could have killed in self-defense ends up murdering both of your parents. That seems like a net loss. Wouldn't you say? And they say, yes, but I can't do any of it. I can't be responsible for the murder. And this seems so implausible. Trust me, though, I have met people like this that have explicitly stated these exact things in real life conversations with real people. I know that's pretty sketchy. The idea behind this is that, like, you enable. The idea behind this, though, is that people say, I hate violence. And then they refuse to do anything about violence, which increases the amount of violence in a lot of contexts. And if you say deterrence is the best form of reducing violence, they piss their pants. Piss their pants. Speak softly and carry a big stick, right? The idea that if you use overwhelming force on a small number of people, that small number of people will not be able to terrorize a large number of people. Pacifists lose their shit. Now then, on the other hand, we have another sort of brand of, like, ultimate pacifists. Like, they've got their final solution where they would use violence to get rid of every single violent person or every single person that they think is capable of violence, right? Not just deterrence, but actively seeking out and getting rid of people that they think would cause violence. And then that's the other extreme, right? They're willing to increase the overall amount of violence in the world for the sake of their goal of getting rid of it. Both of these examples, right, illustrate the problem at hand here, is that we present ideas that have a fundamental principle on hand, and we take one concept from it and extrapolate upon that without really thinking about our reasons for following this doctrine, we might say, reasons at all, and we end up becoming what we might say the villain in the story. It gets really, really complicated when we're talking about somebody that quite literally believes in nothing or an idea that does not exist. Like ideas in mathematical formulae, like randomness. Like random number generators don't exist in nature. It just doesn't happen. Things don't happen randomly in nature. And they don't happen deterministically either. It's probably, if you follow science, it's closer to some sort of quantum superpositioning where things are more likely to happen, but they don't always happen. Usually because of other things that are likely to happen, caused by other things that are likely to happen, and you get this array that's basically almost living. And whether or not all of the particles in the universe are part of some greater consciousness or whatever, those theories are out there, but that's not a discussion for this time. The point is that it's not very difficult to realize that randomness doesn't happen. There's too much science about that. You don't get randomness, pure randomness. I'm sharing my words. You don't get pure randomness. You don't get pure meaninglessness either. Simply because that we can say that things happen means that there's some sort of meaning. because we can define things, there is meaning. And that can be totally facetious because you could define something and not really give a shit about it. And somebody had to, but I mean, like, you get it. You get it. It gets so convoluted. This is why these philosophies are able to thrive, is because they allow simple things to get really, really convoluted. I use the example again and again. Somebody says, you lay, a chicken is laid from an egg. And you say, fuck, man. What the fuck? Dude, what the fuck? And they say, chickens come from eggs. Are you stupid? And you say, eggs do not lay chickens. That on no grounds does that make sense. Ever. And they say, dude, chickens come from eggs. I don't know what to tell you. And you say, yeah, I know. But not like that. And they're like, they just stare at you like you're fucking stupid. This is the point that we get to, is where we're trying to show somebody that an additional thing doesn't come from something that already exists. The egg is the preformed version of the chicken. It doesn't give birth to an additional chicken. It's so stupid. The metaphor is so stupid. And I hate it on every level for the same reasons that it's convoluted enough to make you just rage quit everything. People that say shit like this don't know that they're rage baiting everybody around them. And then nobody wants to take up that argument upon themselves to try to tackle it, to untangle it, to unfold it. And in most cases, it's pointless because without the person's desire for anything, they won't change it. They'll double down because they truly, truly believe in it. Depression causes a shitty life. Like, no. No, it really doesn't. A shitty life causes depression. A chicken lays an egg, not the other way around. Yeah, you can go between the two. It makes sense, and depression further enables a shitty life, right? Chicken, egg, hatch. Another chicken. But if you start from the egg, the middle point, and say, and you forget about the shitty life that you created for yourself, right? You remove the first step that you're responsible for, and you just say, well, the chicken was laid from the egg. Everybody's confused. They're not going to try to correct you because they know that you'll be an insufferable little bitch about it, but they're not going to respect you in any meaningful manner. I could run around in circles all day, right? If we have chicken, egg, chicken, then we can just say that the first chicken is not wanting anything in life. The egg, the second step, is meaninglessness. And then the chicken, again, is not seeing anything in life that you can do. Right? So if we remove the first step, not actually wanting anything, right? Nothing to move towards, and just say, meaninglessness causes not having anything to do, you remove such a critical step. And the issue is that once we get to that point and we say that, brother, you just don't want anything out of life. You want other people to just hand it to you, to tell you what you want, and then to have you like grateful for that and think that you came up with that and that that's your thing that you built. Like, are we just going to gloss over that? No, we really can't do that. I'm sorry, brother. Once you get to that point, they keep on just looping back, more excuses, and it's always justified by the first thing, by the first egg or whatever. Their first experience that they accidentally like created a perception that gave them the illusion of controlling reality with their beliefs. that becomes the egg. It self-justifies because they won't look any further beyond it. It becomes their god, that self-evident piece of information. But the problem is that they know there's something they're supposed to be doing, but they interpret it as, I know there's something more for me in life, and it's just being hidden from me. It's just been taken from me because of the system. Really? Where did they take it? Why do they hate you so much that they stole yours? Why do they care about you? Why should they care about you? You have nothing that they want. Who are they? People will bash conspiracy theories all day and then create ones in their head. Like, they'll have a conspiracy theory that they're actually doing something with their life that makes them valuable. That they actually have a personality. That's the biggest conspiracy theory with a lot of people, is that they're actually unique. And to make things worse, they base their entire personality on being a quote, individual. An individual. They can't even make friends because they're trying to differentiate themselves from everybody. It's a problem. When you can't have associations and you're actively seeking them out, well, you reinforce this idea that the dead man has, that nothing works out, that circumstance is against him, that everything always just you can't do anything. You can't do anything. It's circumstance, man. It's circumstance. Fuck you. I'm getting tired of this shit. Like, it's difficult to... I'm getting tired of even explaining it. Like, how many layers have we gone through? This guy is impressive with the amount that he's stacked up. Like, he's made his video bulletproof. Not to us. Like, not to anybody looking in that's just gonna think like, okay, this is a bit over the top, a bit stupid. But here's the thing. We got in Nothing Matters, right? We have his justification of certainty, his differentiation from the people that believe in certainty that a lot of people don't respect. He's got his fantasy. He's got randomness set up, right? He's managed to combine randomness with certainty. This is insane. Do you know how impressive it is to be able to delude yourself to that level? To mix randomness and certainty? Like, you'd be like, oh, why won't you do this thing? Because it's not going to work out. How do you know? Because everything is random, dude. And you're like, what the fuck? There's different phraseologies you can go about explaining this. That people go about justifying this mindset. And every single time, you have to shrug your shoulders and just kind of scrunch your eyebrows together. Where it's like, yeah, okay, I guess. It's like, you're not going to argue with them. What good is it going to do? You know you can't change their mind. If you try to change their mind, it'll get worse. Another huge problem is that when you try to change the mind of somebody that thinks that the world is quite literally oppressing them through some sort of circumstances, whether it's randomness, and like he's gonna say, I'm pretty sure he hasn't said it already because I haven't gotten very far into it, that there is like no overlord type of deal, but he still managed to put in the idea that we are oppressed by just the way that things are, by this hellscape of an earth that we live on. When you try to change the mind of somebody that is fundamentally oppressed, somebody that believes that when other people say, dude, that thought process it's not real, it doesn't exist, it doesn't track, you cannot give me examples of this in reality, they see it as somebody trying to shut them down. And they use that as proof to justify the fact that they're oppressed. Right? Because again, in this whirlwind where everything is certain that nothing's going to work out and we die eventually, it is also random and totally up to chance. It is certain that random circumstance will fuck them. That's what they know. And they're certain about their beliefs that are based off of perceptions of manufactured experiences within their minds. So they're certain about the things that they've never seen that they use for proof for their beliefs, that create the perceptions, that manufacture the experiences of their memories. But when somebody else tells them, like, hey, look at that over there, look at that, look at that, look at that, they just shut down. They say, no, you don't know these circumstances, bro. My circumstances are random as hell. It does not work like that for me. I know because I tried it, right? This hypothetical mind game experiment where sometimes they try things, like maybe they even just tried something once, like a solution. Oh, I tried drinking chamomile tea before bed and I couldn't sleep, LMAO, neglecting the fact that they drank 5 cans of Monster right before they sipped that tea, and then they couldn't sleep. And then they use the fact that they've tried on an experience to say later on, when confronted about not being able to solve their problems, that they've tried to solve their problems, right? These half-truth witticism type thingies. Woo, wispy fake experiences. They use that as proof that they can't do something unrelated because they associate their attempts at trying with always failing because of random circumstance that they totally didn't have anything to do with. Are we going in circles again yet? Random, certain, oppressed by the way that things are. Life is meaningless. And on the next bit, he uses the certainty argument to say that we can't change anything. It's just the circumstances, my brother. And then he says, well, don't get me wrong, I don't believe in any oppressor, right? Because things just happen randomly. My brother in Christ, hold it right there. You used certainty to say that we were oppressed, right? By what? If it's random, we cannot be oppressed. And then you say, no, there's actually not an oppressor, it's randomness. That is an oppressor, right? Building ideas from ideas. What the fuck? What the shit? This guy's a tough nut.
And life itself has no meaning and everything just randomly happens and we can't control it, you know? It's not like there's some being that's like manipulating our world and, you know, just like controlling us as robots, or, you know, there's no higher being that's trying to make this world a better place that we're living in. You know, none of that exists. You know, everything that happens in this world is just random and meaningless, and there's no explanation to it, and there never will be.
And then it's not certainty. No, it just happens that way. Because of randomness, it just happens. You mean fate? That thing you don't fucking believe in? Oh, but I said you can't control it, not that it's certain. Yeah, dude, you said you're making it out to be certain that you can't control things, and therefore, what? Don't you get fate? Is that not what it is? Is your destiny? Okay, so he's making it out to be that, like, there's no gods, right? He gives the thing where it's like, oh, there's nothing manipulating us, but there's also nothing making the world a better place. And I'm going to come back to the point where if there's no higher being than yourself and you perceive it that way, then aren't you the higher intelligent being, life form that's supposed to make the world a better place? And isn't that something you can believe in? But first of all, we have to address the fact that he gives the dichotomy of overlords, right? Good and bad. But he fails to mention that he has his own god that he believes in here, and it is randomness, random chance, the great lord of circumstance. La-di-da, la-di-dee. That rhymed. I was trying to figure out that you turn that into a rap fucking bit. You know, if I had an editor and a team, maybe we could work something out, right? Hit me up, MGM. We'll make something powerful to empower the dead men. we can exploit them in your audience. Trust me, I've got strats. I've got the playbook. I know the dark psychology of marketing. Oh my god, we're gonna. I explained the concepts of gods earlier. I don't think it's literally the guy in the sky. I believe it. The idea of gods, in a general sense, the way that I use the term very loosely, is something that you won't think past, that you take to be self-evident. We all have this. It's that point that we all go to. We're just at different spots in different places for different reasons. What point do you stop consuming information because it is no longer beneficial for you to be spending time on learning when you could be living? Right? If your worldview aligns with everything that you do, there's really no reason to go and dig any deeper. And most people do not have to create esoteric knowledge behind everything that happens to get this going. The problem is that we've kind of accidentally created a very easy way to make this esoteric justification system, because so many people have taken it as self-evident recently, because just nobody has combated it, because we see it as like a symptom of mental health, and we just need to, let it play out and let therapy do its thing. But therapy is dependent on people wanting to be able to change, and this archetype of individual adapts to fit a system where they can gain from pity, take the easy route, and once it became easy to simply sidestep the idea of help by saying that they want help, they really want to believe in hope and that there's something better, but they just can't, right? And they, again, sidestep it. And if they're hopeless, then they're helpless. And therefore, because we have to let the system play out, right? The psychotherapy model is outdated because it requires people to be invested in the actual change they want. They need to want it. And we've gotten to a point where it is very, very easy to say that you want to change and just not, right? There's a catalog of excuses built up. Everybody has sort of been helping each other out in one way or another by putting these into the mainstream, by just, we gotta let the people vent, right? You can't say too much about them and be insensitive. They're going through a sensitive time. You don't know how they could take that. It's not good. But now we're at a point where we've allowed them to become invulnerable to the therapies that we say that they need to do, which is the reason why we can't intervene and call them out on their bullshit. And they use that as an excuse for normal people actually calling them out on their bullshit, is because they say, oh, it's not helpful, citing therapy things. And it's another big cyclical thing. And so the esoteric shit, like the stuff that is deep to the point where it's just confusing and very hard to disprove on that basis, has gotten to the mainstream, right? We let people use these things. They just do, because it is so easy. And because we don't force them to think past that, which ironically these convoluted things, they're very, ironically, surface level. It's like having a messy single story house, like with a very, very messy floor plan, where there's not layers to it. There's one layer and it's very just fucked. Just straight up. Like there's nothing good with it. I'm simplifying things. But it's not, the point is that it's not actually that deep. It just appears to be. Like somebody can drown themselves in the bathtub, but that's not because the water is deep. It's because they didn't struggle enough. So when they're allowed to sort of sit at the surface level with a really convoluted worldview, and they're not even able to look out their window and see the world because there's a fucking spare room in front of it, and they built themselves in, put walls in front of their windows and whatnot to just hide themselves from the obvious fact of things. Or not the obvious fact, but the way that things go in their experiences, right? They reinterpret their experiences. It's not like they're actually lying about things. They're reinterpreting things. And we allow this to happen. And people get stuck on very basic things. And it creates this god of nothing. And nothing as in stuff that just does not exist. And by does not exist, again, we mean things that when they test them in reality, they fail every single time. And if they keep trying it because they believe that something will happen when they do something, nothing happens because they keep doing the same thing over and over and over. Insanity, doing the same thing, expecting different results, going after something that does not exist in that concept. In this context is something that just does not play out from their own experience, something that they should be perceiving, but they allow their beliefs to reinterpret that entire experience. And thus we get a God sort of idea that they won't look past, and that prevents them from actually taking steps towards getting to the first step, which is wanting, because, right? They missed the point. They thought they needed potential before they had a purpose. They need something to go after. They need the want before they have the ability. Repeatedly laying the chicken from the egg. So what does he get from this? He gets some huge array of picking and choosing, right? On the good God side, he says he gets to make the claim, right, and not be refuted for it because he doesn't believe. He gets to make the claim that there is no good God making the world better. And therefore, he also gets to make the claim that because of that, the world is not how it should be, and that there should be something making it better if there were to be good things. And then he reinforces it by going to the other side of things and saying there is no malevolent God, right? So then people won't say, oh, you're just complaining about your circumstances based on a God, right? He gets saved from that as well, while also complaining about the fact that there are malevolent circumstances, right? The oppression of certainty, which he also deflects and says there's randomness, but it's certain that I can't change things, can't choose things, and yet here he is choosing things and changing how he sees reality. And on the good side of things, he says that there is no good God, there's no higher intelligence, but then that comes back to bite him in the ass because he, by his definition, is the higher intelligence, so therefore he should be changing things. But then the bad God makes it so that there's randomness and oppression, which makes it so he can't change things. But don't worry, he doesn't believe in that bad, malevolent God, because there is no such thing like randomness, right? He takes the middle ground. He says that he does not have the God. He does not have the association of having a God attached to him. And yet he still has the God of randomness protecting him from being attacked for any blatant, outright claims about the world, right? He's not making any assertions, so he's not going to get flack for making assertions. He doesn't have to be embarrassed for his assertions because he doesn't actually have a God, and he doesn't actually believe these things because it's random, and there isn't either of those things, but he stated that there's both of those things, and neither of the good or like the belief associated outcomes in those things or the unbelief associated outcome in those things, and instead it's something else altogether different that does not exist. Again, we're back to believing in nothing at all, the God that is not, which basically gives him proof to do whatever he wants, to say that he believes in whatever he wants without actually saying that he believes in it. And it goes around in circles and allows him to act upon his whims as if they are the next best thing to purpose, because he can't have purpose because it's meaningless because of those gods of randomness. But don't worry, he doesn't actually believe in any gods. It's just some big unknown thing, what a god is. So because he won't pursue anything, life is meaningless, and therefore he won't pursue anything because life is meaningless, and therefore he won't pursue anything because life is meaningless, and therefore he won't pursue anything because life is meaningless. Yeah, but you forgot the first chicken, which was you. You're the fucking cock. Like, literally the yellow-bellied motherfucker that was too afraid of life to actually confront it. And now we are here. What a fucking mind fuck. Do you understand what this does to people? It makes it so they can't function. They have no solutions to anything. They may have gotten rid of all the responsibilities for the things that they had done, but they also ran out of things to do. They're trapped in seeing the world as a bad place because it's not as it should be, because they've refused to reevaluate anything or build any solid foundations, restate their principles in a manner that could be effective. Here we are. Here we are. And still, if you want hope and you don't believe that there's any higher life form, then you've assigned yourself to the highest position. If you're at this point and you haven't gotten to like the next thing we're going to talk about, and you just simply don't believe that there's any higher life form, and that means that life is meaningless, just stop right here, and take it into your mind that if that's true, you're the only one that can do anything. And anything is better than nothing. You don't need antinatalism, right? The world is not going to be better off without humanity. Here's a pitch. Humanity has the capability to one day take life forms to other parts of the galaxy. If you care about life, not even human life, you can support human life for that singular function as a transportation vessel for other forms of life to spread abundance into the universe. I'm just going to say that before we get to the next bit, because he has an excuse for fucking everything. Holy shit.
And that's the thing about life. There's no explanation to anything in life. You know, none of us know why we're here, how we're here, when we're going to leave here. None of us know anything about where we are, and none of us barely know anything about ourselves.
The amount of tweaking that I'm doing over evil Ethan Klein here, Dr. H3H3 inconspicuous, this motherfucker has got me grinding my gears. Like, I'm not even sure I want to go into this much depth, but I have to if I want to get my point across. If I want to continue to get my point across, to reach the level of to just not give up on what I've started so far, I need to do this. This is what I'm doing. I had to write down bullet points for this single clip. Oh my God. There's a lot to unpack here. Oh my God. My God is furious. You don't know him. It starts out. It starts out. There's no explanation for anything. There's no certainty. He's looking, grasping for certainty. He's so deep in looking for certainty, and yet he still manages to say that there's no certainty. And we know that he's looking for certainty because he says that the only thing that we can know is that we die, right? And he states that we cannot change things as they happen. That's not something we can do. And whether he truly, what does he believe? Which one does he believe in? Why is he doing this? I'll tell you why. At the end of this, it's really all as an excuse to the previous point. If he puts the human condition at the very top of the totem pole, right? Like I said, he has the issue that he has responsibility for everything that he does. That is freedom. That is the human condition, is that we realize we can do whatever we want. The only problem is that we also understand that there are consequences for our actions, and we need to decide what we're willing to pay for. So what he's doing is he's devaluing the human being, so to speak, so as to remove the responsibility. Now, there's no explanation for anything. Again, it's one of those truths that you can spit out and justify, and yet it holds no water in this context. We can't know anything. We can know things to the extent that it will benefit us. We can know if there's no explanation for anything. Why are you wearing that t-shirt? Why are you wearing clothes at all? Why are you in a car? Why are you going to job? Why are you learning language? Why are you speaking? Do you know the words that you're speaking? Does it make sense? Comprehende? You know something. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. And you're very certain about certain things. If there's no explanation, you can shut the fuck up. You can shut the fuck up. Get the hell out of here, for Christ's sakes. If that's what it really comes down to, that we can't know anything, and that is your belief, for sure, you shouldn't even be telling anybody anything, because the only thing you can do is mislead them. Assuming that nothing has an explanation, why are you trying to give us an explanation for all of life's problems? Or are you trying to give an explanation for the problems and not the purpose? If you could give an explanation for anything to be beneficial, to try to make that world as it should be, you should be giving us the explanation of life as it should be. Right? What do we do? What do we do, buddy? Come on, give us the quick fix. Give us the pill. Let us take the pill, buddy. Let us take the pill. You only find certainty in death. If you really want to know something, like at the cosmic depth of things, the only thing you can really know is that you will die someday. That's it. And that's vague, right? There's plenty of people that are not sure if they were born or if they're alive or if they're going to die. There's plenty of people that think they're immortal, right? If we're taking any bit of a nuance, if we're taking any contrary opinion as not being able to know something for absolutely certain, we cannot discredit anybody, and that includes the schizophrenics. Meaning, you can't even be certain about what you're certain about. You can't be certain about death. If there's no explanation for anything, just stop moving. Stop moving. But guess what? Your muscles will start twitching. They'll get restless. You'll get hungry. You'll get thirsty. Your brain will start going crazy. It'll release adrenaline, ghrelin, all these different neurochemicals. And we know that. We don't know the cosmic depth to which they interweave and why, and if there's some sort of greater reason for it all. Who cares? When you get hungry, do you need to know exactly the macronutrient count and all of the particular enzymes and where they're sourced and their entire history throughout all of cosmic time and space, and then trace it back and then understand the relevance to where they're at and how they'll process through your body and affect you and continue your trajectory throughout the entire span of the universe and where you'll end up relative to those? Like, no, you need to know that you're hungry so you can fucking eat. And sometimes you need to know when you shouldn't eat when you're hungry if you want to live longer. Assuming, if you're eating, I'm assuming you want something, right? These are the impulses. That's all you know that you want. The no explanation jargon is just, it's fluff. It's, what's that word that they use? What's that guy from Wall Street? What's his word? It's like nothing. It's fugazi. But what did he say? I don't know. You just need to be able to convince yourself of an explanation for something, right? Take something that makes sense so that you can move forward. But the problem is that if you don't have desires beyond impulses, there is no greater reason than satisfying the impulse. But you did that to yourself. At some point, that was your choice. This still goes back to your responsibility, no matter how hard you try. Now, why we're here, how we're here, all that garbage. We don't know that. We don't know why we're here. We don't know how we're here. Guess what? We also get to decide that. And especially if you believe that there's no God, even though your God is randomness, and I guess that lets you decide not to decide. But if there is no God, you get to decide why you're here. You get to make your best guess on how you got here. You probably have a reason for how you got in front of your camera, how you got in your car, how you got in this situation where you're thinking about all of these thoughts. What chain of events got you to this point? What series of choices did you make? I'm genuinely curious. Genuinely, please, I'm going to search, I'm going to go through the channel videos, and I'm going to find out if I can. Seriously. But the biggest part is that he says, we know nothing about ourselves. We know nothing about ourselves. Okay, this is such... where do we start? Where do we start? You know nothing about yourself. You clearly want some sort of cosmic depth of explanation to all this garbage. You want to know on some insanely certain scale, so then you can choose the best of all possible worlds to go and pursue with the least amount of effort. You know, I'll bet that if we were presented all the options, all the paths we could take, we would notice that all of the best outcomes would eventually lead us to undergo the most trials. And what I'm assuming that this guy wants is not that option, but the option that has the least amount of trials and the most amount of benefit. But the problem with that is that you get there and you still have the numbness, the brain numbness, the mind numbing static of just purgatory where nothing is accomplished on one's own. So somewhere in there, he has to add in the unrealistic ask, the unrealistic request that he gets all those things as well as the feeling that he accomplished this all on his own, because he wants some sort of purpose. That has to be in the package too. He needs the purpose so that he can have the sense of satisfaction for the things that he gets that he doesn't work for. And that is something that is not possible to attain, right? Setting oneself up for failure again and again, because without the tragedy, you don't gain those benefits. You have to create the tragedy of yourself for yourself to maintain this image, this fantasy of reality, so then you can get this sense of community. Because once you stop thinking these things, once you get to the point where things start benefiting you, you won't be able to think these things. Like, if you truly want the life experience, quote unquote, you can't have this whole outlook. It's not possible, because you have to start looking at things, appreciating things, putting them into perspective. And then what do? You lose the orientation. You lose that community built around misery, that community built around gathering together and jerking each other off on this nihilistic bullshit. And a lot of these people I've noticed, they say, oh, I'm not depressed, I'm not advocating for suicide, I'm not nihilistic. It's yes on the nihilism point, not the other ones. Yes, you are. This is literally a nothing matters situation. You are spreading and perpetuating it and preventing the type of future that you wish to see. Inherently, I think that the inability to stick to one's own principles is one of the most disgraceful things. Personally, for me, I believe that the biggest sin is to purposefully not become who we know ourselves capable of becoming. Not doing what we know ourselves capable of doing. That is the biggest problem, because that creates the most turmoil, the most regret. Because if we don't do something that we know that we want to do, that we know that we can do, even if it's like 500 steps removed from where we're standing, and we don't do it, and we really want to, then we miss out on, we get that knowledge in our minds of a possible future that we threw away. And that brings in so much bitterness and regret later in life. But if you can't even stick to your own principles, that's like the second biggest flaw. I don't care if somebody has this sort of mindset, if they can stick to their principles, if they can move towards whatever world that they think that they're attaining. Like lifelong activists, I think a lot of environmentalists are stupid, and I think there's a lot of ways that they can go about it differently. But I think also that a lot of those lifetime activists that spend their entire lives pursuing what they believe in, I respect that. I respect that. And to the same extent, there's a lot of them that do more harm than good, and I don't respect those ones, even if they don't realize what they're doing. But inevitably, at the end of the day, what he's doing here is devaluing the human. He is devaluing the person by saying, we know nothing about ourselves. We have no explanation for anything. We're not smart enough to really do anything. There's nothing that we can really do to benefit the world, because we have no cosmic knowledge. We aren't gods. But you don't believe in gods. You don't believe that something like that can exist. So why are you comparing us to that? Why is there that expectation? If we are still the highest life form, we have to work with what we've got. And by that bar that you've set, you still have the responsibility to do what you know yourself capable of. Because otherwise you're just whining. You're asking somebody else to do these things for you. But you're also removing the possibility for other people to do things for you because you say that all humans are like this. Newsflash, they're not. But you still want them to help you. You still want them to do these things for you. You still want society as a whole to change, to benefit you. Really. That's what you're on about. Karl Marx built an entire fucking philosophy around this. He said, it's for the good of all people. And you read his stuff, it is for the good of a few. The ruling class, the intellectual, the people that know better for the masses. They get to choose until things, level out, right? And he added in that caveat, until things stabilize. And don't quote me directly on Das Kapital. I don't want to get back into it. That was the worst book I've ever read. Those 3 volumes, that's the most wasted time I have ever spent in my life. I'm going to piss on that guy's grave. I'm going to go on vacation and I'm going to piss on his grave. That's how bad it was. But he created this system. A guy that never fucking worked in his life. A guy that exploited everybody around him. A guy who was such a bad father that almost all of his children killed themselves. A guy that was gross and disgusting, never washed himself, and couldn't even finish his own book because he had so many boils from not showering and sitting around for so long and not doing anything. He was a drug addict, possibly a rapist, and in the end, his philosophy was used as intended by people like him for the deaths of over 150 million people, if you keep tally, across all of the communist regimes. And if we keep up these kind of mindsets, where somebody is entitled to other people changing society, we're going to keep repeating history. Every single time people say, we just need to do it a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, it's their ass on the line, and the person who's saying all of this in power, in comfort, in cushy, whatever. Problem is, when you do that, you actually really have to make the world a terrible place outside of a few select groups. It swung the pendulum so far towards this supposed equality that it became the most authoritarian philosophy to ever exist. On paper, it is one of the most beautiful communal group efforts, and in practice, it is one of the most dystopian, brutal philosophies that's ever existed on the planet. That's what happens when you try to force everybody to think a certain way. Nobody is ever going to think a certain way, and especially it does not work out well when we want people to think a certain way based on the ideas of somebody who wants those people to change the world for them into something that they can't quite imagine themselves. He did the same thing. You devalue those above you. You bring them down to your level to create equality. He's trying to bring everybody down to his level, right? He says, we're all like this. None of us have the potential. None of us are at our full potential. None of us. He's trying to suck us in. The worst part about this is that it's not even conscious, and he thinks he's doing the right thing. But here's the problem, is that all of the worst things in history had the best of intentions. The best of intentions are what allows people to ignore the obvious flaws until it is too late. We're not going to get some enlightenment out of this. There is no cosmic relief here. This will not contribute towards the world at its full potential. What are you trying to do here, brother? What? Because the only thing that you can do